record show that a quorum of board members is present and that this meeting has been duly called and its notice has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. We do not have any community input this afternoon, and so we'll move straight into action items. And I'll entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
Mr. President,
Ms. Chaka?
I move to approve the superintendent's recommendation to approve the monthly human resource report. Oh, no. Hold on. Do I just say consent agenda?
You can
Yes,
just say
as presented.
consent agenda.
Consent agenda, sorry. To approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? All of those in favor, please raise your right hand. Passes unanimous. Thank you. Item B. Do you have anything to?
Yeah, we do have a use of capital project funds for facility and transportation related projects, and Mr. Miller is going to briefly share that information.
Right. As you may recall, last summer we had some pretty rough go of it with the intense heat and the long heat wave that we had. Really impacted campus air conditioning and bus air conditioners. Last September, the board approved $750,000 as a support services repair contingency, and then followed that up with another $500,000 in March to allow us to make immediate repairs over the 23-24 school year. We've made excellent use of those funds over the last year. We've completed building repairs totaling $66,000 at 12 schools and 1 support facilities. We bought bus air conditioning machines that extract Freon and do all those things to allow them to work on them better, about $12,000. We purchased $150,000 worth of bus air conditioner parts, and then completed about $50,000 in air conditioning repairs on buses. Our maintenance staff and our facility staff have worked hard to get about $176,000 worth of chiller annuals completed using those funds. Another $110,000 on chiller repairs at 12 schools and 2 support facilities. We've purchased $15,000 in AC components and completed another $560,000 in air conditioning repairs to individual units within the buildings across the district, about 23 schools. And 4 support facilities. We replaced units and purchased software that allows us to diagnose, train hardware. So really made a lot of headway on all of that, the problems we were having last year that really has made a difference in the campus life of staff and students. So the investments we made have really had an impact, and the efforts of our team really showed as we went into the current school year, and the way that the opening was this year compared to what it was last year was really a night and day difference. You could really tell the difference in the attitudes of our staff, our bus drivers, campuses. You know, the campuses were cool. And we always have issues with various little things here and there in the district, but it was really a major difference. Of course, the voter approved VADR last year addressed the deficits, and Alice and Jeff provided some additional funding for the annuals that we need to do every year that we really haven't done in the past. So about $726,000 was added for preventative maintenance. But from a repair side, that we still need some support from the capital contingency fund to make sure we can respond quickly. A great example to that is the elevator here at the Education Support Center went out. That cost is about $90,000, and it's a 4 to 6 week lead time. If you add up to 3 weeks of waiting for board approval, that could really create a 9 to 12 week lead time. And the $90,000 cost is about 30% of the maintenance budget for life safety systems for the year. So these funds really help us to respond quickly, make sure we can make repairs and not negatively affect our ability to continue all the way through the end of the year. So we are requesting another $750,000 out of capital and contingency to provide a contingency reserve fund. And the use of those funds will continue to require my approval on each individual item. So they submit a request, I review it, and then we release the funds to them, and then we track and report that to the board every month as part of the bond and capital report. We have another request of $100,000 out of, I believe we did both of them, yes, out of capital and contingency reserve. This is to replace the infield mix at Clear Creek, Clear Falls, and Clear Springs. We've already done Clear Lake and Clear Brook. Back in 2019, we had replaced our typical mix with a proprietary blend that would allow them to get on the fields quicker. And we at the time thought it would work and that we would have a much better use of those those systems would work better, be easier to maintain, and let our students get back on those quicker. As we found out over the last 5 years, it's a very expensive product and it's proprietary. And it does blow away. We thought it would last longer, but it doesn't. It requires the same level of replacement and regrading as the regular sand and clay, which we know how to maintain and we know what it's made of. So we are requesting $100,000 to convert the remaining 3 fields. It does include laser grading, which ensures that it's got the appropriate slopes for the baseball and softball fields. So the total, this request is a recommendation of superintendent to approve the use of capital projects funds of $850,000 for facility and transportation related projects.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Any questions from the board? Okay.
Paul, I know you aren't prepared to probably guesstimate this, but what would it be to AstroTurf all of the baseball and softball fields at the 5 high schools? And the reason why I asked that is because I know we did that for the football fields.
We did.
To kind of help with the maintenance and, performance and being able to rain and things of that nature, and just knowing that I think it was our own softball and baseball tournaments this year, we had to move those off-site to accommodate, the weather.
Right. I don't have an estimate on what it would cost to do those, but I can certainly follow back up with an accurate estimate and provide that in a Friday packet.
Okay.
One of the reasons we haven't really entertained that is that at Clearbrook and at Clear Springs, the baseball and softball fields are in a floodway.
Right.
And detention, and if turf floods, it floats, and so you'd have to regularly replace those 2 fields.
Gotcha.
Because of that, where they are. It doesn't mean you can't relocate them to another location that's not in a floodway or floodplain.
Right.
But if we did 3 but not the other 2, that could create a competitive disadvantage for those 2 schools. So that's really why we haven't entertained it really hard, because it does allow you to get immediately on those fields and you can play in the rain.
Right.
Right. So we understand the benefit that would derive, but we're not sure about whether we can actually do that with our current facilities.
I would like to look at what it would cost at that, at each individual school, what that would be. And then I would also just be curious what that would be, like, let's say at the stadium, like maybe 2 fields out there for baseball and softball.
We have had some conversations with Franklin and Kirby about this area back here that we're considering selling might be large enough with adjacent parking for Clear Creek Intermediate and ESC to allow people to visit and use those. Those are large enough to do 2 fields, and that would not be in a detention pond.
Okay.
So it's certainly an option to do a centralized, just like your stadium.
Right.
So just could you repeat again, which schools have the fields in the detention pond already?
Clearbrook and Clear Springs.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's, the ask here is small enough that I don't think it's really worth delaying this project to see.
Right.
Because,
Yeah.
But I think for future reference, it would be good to have, just so we can consider that in our menu of options, just to know how much it would cost. I mean, I agree that the detention issue makes it kind of tough at those 2 schools, but.
Right. And of course, nothing's insurmountable. You can relocate the baseball, softball to other areas of the existing campus, or create an off-site location that the different schools could share to at least provide some relief to be able to use during heavy rain areas.
Right.
Any other questions or comments?
I have one. Does anything in these funds cover anything to give relief at Springs and Falls natatoriums?
The natatoriums were converted to fresh air intake only, similar to the other 3 high schools. We are circling back and doing fans like they have at Springs and Falls at the other 3 schools. But the current system is operating as it was designed to operate. albeit every school is about 88
Those two are
degrees.
just a little different just because they can't open the hall doors to bring in any cold air since they're freestanding buildings. So
Right.
they are extremely not comfortable in the summertime.
We do have sensors in those that track the temperatures, and we went out and heard some of that information. We did go out there and measure temperatures, and it was about 88 degrees at Falls when I was in there after the work that we had completed. It was, I think, 89 in Lake and 87 at Brook. So in terms of temperature, it's relatively consistent with what the other schools are.
Any other questions?
Hey, I had just to follow up on Ms. Checka's question. I know, like in Springs, we have big ass fans, right? I don't know if it's that particular brand, but I know we have something like those. Do the other natatoriums have those?
Falls does. When we
Okay.
did that work, the board approved that work back in 2018, I believe. But we're going to circle back and review the other three, Brook
Okay.
Creek and Lake. But the fans are only really for the spectator areas. Generally, you don't want them over swimmers because they get out and
and
the
they're
fan makes them cold.
Right.
The air conditioning versus natural fresh air intake affects water temperature, so you generally want to focus more on temperature of the water in the air, just to make sure it's got fresh air and it's removing the chlorine and bromines out of the air and provides a safe environment. It is warmer than you could if you had an air conditioner. If you air condition it, then you have to have boilers to heat the water to make sure that it stays balanced with the air temperature.
And then I guess maybe looking into what those misters and if that would be a short-term solution or fix.
We
like
can
those
certainly
fan
look, we can look
misters.
into a host of different systems that would help.
Okay.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion?
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve the recommendation of the superintendent for the use of capital project funds of $850,000 for facility and transportation related projects.
Thank you, Mr. Crowe. Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. That passes unanimous. Thank you. And item C,
Yeah, it goes back to Mr. Miller regarding the purchase of 5 school liaison officer vehicles and associated equipment.
So back in 2022, the board approved the purchase of 5 vehicles for our SLOs that we added as part of the safety committee. Those vehicles still have not arrived and they keep getting pushed back. We did have an opportunity with this. Greg helped me and Dwayne really do the background check on this. We can actually get 6 of these vehicles that are ready within the next 30 days for the same cost that we got 5 of the previous ones. These are Chargers rather than the Ford Explorers, but our SLO division indicates that they're good with those vehicles. Our transportation department agrees that they're reliable, that they can maintain them. So we feel like getting the 6 instead of the 5. The 6th one replaces one that was recently totaled, so that allows us to stay static, and for the same price we get 6 instead of 5. So this has been vetted with Greg and his crew. So we're asking for the board to approve the purchase of 6 school liaison officer vehicles with associated radios and other equipment from ILA buy board vendors Cap Fleet and Cameron County Dodge in an amount not to exceed $350,000 with capital and contingency funds. Those funds having already been approved back in 2022.
okay, thank you. Any questions, comments from the board?
I guess my only question is, so do we own all of the vehicles that the SLOs use?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's
So-
part of our contract with Galveston County.
Okay.
They provide us the decals and the badging to make sure that it's a Galveston County Sheriff's Office badged car, but we pay for insurance, we pay for the vehicles.
Okay.
Were there any local vendors that provided any RFP?
Not on this one, because it was an opportunity that presented itself and we already had SLO vehicles This, like I mentioned, this took two years plus. We still don't have a completion date on the ones we originally ordered. But this one, they just had them there, and we inquired about it, and they told us they could deliver them within 30 days. So they just happened to have these in stock. And they had already they were police packaged. They're specialized vehicles, so generally they're special order.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I'm assuming that the ones that we never received, and that just gets canceled out because it was never delivered.
Yes, Greg, that's one of the steps Greg and his team took to make sure that we could cancel the other order.
And I would like to say, just with regards, to this as well as the previous item, we talk a lot about just the discipline that the team takes, really looking at our facilities, looking at just the quality and making sure that vehicles are air conditioned, that classrooms and buildings are not running into issues. I know Ms. Cheka shared the issue with a couple of the pools. And I think if we look back, some of it could just be more design related than it is our ability, to do what needs to be done. But just, please pass along our appreciation, because I do think there was a big difference as we started this academic year versus last year. And there were some very specific things that you all did to make sure that we wouldn't repeat that again. And we tried to respond as quickly as we could with board support last year. It does matter, and we know students and teachers and staff are going to perform much better, much closer to world class if they're not in 88 or higher degree classrooms and competing with temporary chillers and coolers. So thank you for prioritizing that and making sure transportation was running and cool. I saw in Dr. Engel's note, we talked about cool school buses, which is a good thing.
Yep.
So we're thankful. We haven't heard a lot of messages about that. There will be instances where things may, fail, but that's going to be more the exception. So for that, I just wanted to say thank you. I didn't say that earlier, but the vehicles for SLOs as well as that are really good.
We will pass that along.
Thank you.
Thank you.
President Sanchez,
Yes.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
I move that the board approves the superintendent's recommendation to approve the purchase of 6 school liaison officer vehicles and associated equipment from ILA by board vendors Cap Fleet and Cameron Country Dodge in an amount not to exceed $350,000 with capital and contingency funds.
Thank you, Mr. Greenhill. Any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. It passes unanimous. Thank you.
Yep.
So we will transition to information and discussion. And the first item we have is Special Education Gibson audit update.
Yes, okay, thank you. So in 2018, the Gibson consulting firm conducted an extensive special education review for Clear Creek ISD that included 81 special education program reviews. The objectives were to identify strengths in the special programs and to develop recommendations for improving program efficiency and effectiveness. All recommendations accepted by the district at that time have been completed. However, Dr. Staley and her team have re-examined the 27 recommendations and action items, and she will share progress on this work. I'm going to go ahead and turn that over to Dr. Stallings and Dr. Staley.
Hi, thank you for letting me brag on my department. I always appreciate that. So just a little history, and thank you, Dr. Engel, for kind of summarizing that. But the Gibson audit collected information and presented their recommendations in the 17-18 school year. And I just want to highlight, I guess, how much and how fast we're growing. At that time, we had 4,252 special education students. I pulled the snapshot number just for consistency's sake. We also had 1,003 dyslexia students. Last fall, Dr. Stallings and I met, my team met, and we pulled out what we felt like were 9 high leverage action steps. And so we began working on those immediately. And in fact, some of the things that we were already doing aligned with those high leverage action steps. And we did have periodically putting things in the board, so there was a board update either August 22nd or August 30th. I might have gotten that date wrong. So where we are now is our current enrollment, and this is not a snapshot number because we're not in October yet, but it's 6626. So that is a 50% basically increase since the 2017-2018 school year. Currently, we have 457 students in referral. And what that means is their SST teams have met, and they want to do an initial evaluation to see if a student qualifies for special education. The dyslexia number has also more than doubled in that time. Just a little glow, the Behavior Support Center, and this has nothing to do with the Gibson audit, but I wanted to take this opportunity. We've had 3 students that started on Friday, and I would say it's already a success. Doing really great things with the 3 students, so we will keep you guys updated in the weekly update on some of those nice successes. But just to say, when you go from 4,200 to 6,600, you're expanding everywhere. AA, SLL, resource inclusion, and we appreciate your support with the FTEs so that we can get the students what they need, especially tonight. Thank you very much for those positions as well. So these were the 9 steps. I'm going to just kind of summarize them, but it's basically using outcome data to inform instruction, focusing on the walkthroughs for improvements, doing joint learning walks. RTI is not one that we focus on in special ed. We're kind of like, they go through the RTI process, and if a special education referral is needed. And so we have another department handling that, but we were just in a meeting last week where Ms. Hughes was talking about different things that they were all doing. So I can confidently say that that one is also getting a lot of attention. Prioritizing and managing accommodations, training. So 6 and 7 both have to do with professional learning. One of the things my department hears me say all the time is, you know, if we want the students to learn and grow, we as adults need to continue to learn and grow. Because we know you have one student that might not be successful, you put them in another teacher's class who maybe has done some additional professional learning and the student's successful. So those are really, really important. The transition, that kind of even aligns with everything that we've been talking about with Vision 2030. So special ed is also working on their smooth transition. And then communication is something that I don't think ever falls off anybody's list of important things to focus on, because we always can do better with communication. So what we did with my team is we took those 8 recommendations, and different administrators on the team are kind of the lead for those. And I have their names on the steps that you'll see in the slides forthcoming, so that we really could have a point person who's focusing on that. I really just feel like that will move us faster in implementation, professional learning, all those things. So basically that's the rest of the presentation is going to move us through those slides. So the first step was the data. Jackie Nelson is our administrator. She's our assistant director for elementary. I'm not going to read the whole slide to you all. But one of the things that we were really focusing on is systems and systematizing things, creating protocols, writing down expectations, how to do things. So one of the most important things in special ed is if you're going to ever adjust an ARD, you have to have data. It's about the student's data, and it's actually required. So in our program classes, we're doing 9 weeks review of data. Our goal is always least restrictive environment. And so if we can look at the data more frequently, hopefully the student then can get back into a gen ed class, maybe with some supports there. So we created a protocol. We're doing that each 9 weeks, and we're training everybody in that protocol. The last 2 about restraint data and escalation reports, we were lucky enough to get the autism grant last year, And so through the grant, we did some additional data tracking, more intensive than we had done in the past. And it really kind of opened our eyes to some additional interventions and things that we could do for professional learning. So we're going to continue doing that because it really showed us kind of the gaps that then we could fill as a department. Step 2 was concerning the walkthroughs, and that's the one that I took. Basically, we have been working on creating documents communication-wise for parents and staff so that everybody can understand the programs and what is required. So the next step in that is the critical elements of each program. So that's one of the focuses for this year. So then we can create some support documents for the campus administration. They can't be an expert in all things. So we need to help them just with those. And the critical elements are long, but we can pull out, like we talked about here, high leveraged elements to help them during the walkthroughs. We're using a monthly virtual meeting called Admin Connect. We're also using that for some professional learning in each of the programs to help with that. And then, and we already talked about the walkthroughs. So that's what's going on that. So this one of the ones that I'm in charge of as well is the joint learning walks. This one has been difficult to systematize. I want to give a shout out to Rachel Powell. She's the elementary math coordinator. She is very good about collaborating across departments. She does learning walks with our department, whether we initiate it or she initiates it. But what we really need to do is, okay, well, how are we doing that in all of the areas and not just if Rachel Powell decides to give us a call and we do it. So I will tell you this one is one that we really need to figure out. Is it a multi-year system? Do we want to kind of do a rotation schedule of English, math, science, social studies, elementary, intermediate, high school? How do we do that but still not pull everybody out of the classroom too much? So it's just thoughts right now on this one, trying to come up with a system. Leah Bossy, she's the assistant director for secondary, and she is over the accommodations. So one of the first things we did was review our guidance, and we feel like those documents are strong. But again, professional learning, it doesn't do any good for us to have all the information if we're not sharing it. So we're really, really working on that. One of the things that we have initiated is resource inclusion might train one way on how to do accommodations, and the SD classes, the coaches might be training another way. So one of the things that I've done since I've been there is we need to get some common slide decks. These systems that are the same no matter what program you're in, everybody does a PLAF, people write goals, they have accommodations. Those things we should have a common slide deck for so that there's a foundation and a basis that we're presenting as the department as best practices, and then each area can tweak those for whatever things are exclusive to what they're doing. So that's been really successful. We're continuing to work on that. Step 6 is general educator training. We've really been working on this. Heidi Danner is our coordinator for resource inclusion. She has worked really, really hard on reaching out to principals and general education teachers. She did some great back to school training at New Teacher Week, and I think even in Back to School Week, she's done some administrator training. And we got some amazing feedback that Dr. Silva shared with us. So I feel like we're really gaining traction on this. And then another little success is because we keep talking about it, more and more campuses are reaching out, so that she's already started having specific meetings with campuses so they can talk about their kids, their data, what's going on. So this one's been really, really successful. My hope is that ultimately, it becomes part of that RTI process, and if we can train the general education staff too, that maybe then some of our resource kids could move to inclusion, and maybe some of our inclusion kids could exit special education. So this one I think is really exciting, and I'm super pleased with how Heidi's been doing. PLCs is another one that she's working on. This one is, and I just kind of put it out there, this one is very challenging because each school can have their own kind of PLC model. Just like I was saying, we want to have like a common slide desk. The district trains us in PLCs, but even within a campus, a PLC for algebra may look different than a PLC for English 1, which may look different than the special ed PLC. So we're trying to figure out as a department how we support that. And then also because we have so many singletons, or there's just 2 teachers on a campus. And so then how do we do a PLC that way? So we do talk about it a lot. Early learning has been leading the way kind of on that for us as well. So the department's coming together to just problem solve how we can do that better and how we can support PLCs. So campus transitions for students is something that we talk about every year. And so we talked about LRE already. We've talked about how important professional learning is. But one of the things that we're talking about doing is creating some kind of transition documents and again, a protocol so that we can actually coordinate. We talk about Kid Talk. We talk about attending ARDS for students that are, severe, that need help, but do we really have a system for transition or some kind of protocol for people to work off of? So that's kind of where we think we're moving in that direction. And then the last one, of course, is parent communication. I will say that Penny Sweeney, Leah Bossy is over this one, but Penny Sweeney, our parent resource specialist, has done an outstanding job helping us increase our parent communication. But we have also, again, created some protocols that teachers can follow if they need help. Especially when you're a new teacher, that can be a scary part. The good news is easy, but so then, and even feedback forms in some of the program classes for specific data. So to give you an example, if you have a student in behavior class that maybe has 8 escalations a day, and this day they only had 4, and the teacher sends home, oh, they had a good day. Well, they still had 4 escalations. But does the parent really know what that means? Did they have 0 escalations? Were there no problems? Because that's what I would think if you said they had a good day. So that we can still say they had a great day. The average was 8 escalations a day and they only hit 4. So that's kind of an example of what we're talking about in those program classes. And then future steps. So we are currently in a TEA has a 6-year cycle where they come in and do an audit, kind of evaluate the special ed programs. Ours started August 30th. 6 years ago, we were in the pilot for it. So I like feedback. I like information because it helps direct where we can improve and tells us where we're doing well. And so I'm really looking forward to this finding report. Not that the Gibson report wasn't great, but it is from 2017-18. We have a lot more students in special ed than we had before, and things change in 6 years, 7 years. So I'm super excited about getting these reports because I think that's going to really help us too and inform us of where we could go in the future to get better in our department. And I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Stanley. Any questions from the board? Comments? Ms. Rowe?
Yeah, I did want to ask, a pretty big, I think one of the reasons the Gibson report was impactful was because it set a lot of, it went through the history and set a lot of guidelines in terms of staffing ratios and really quantified some of the, maybe not performance, but at least targets that we should try and get to in the special education department. So have we gone back and tried to see how we stack up on some of those metrics?
We did, I want to say we did look at that probably 2 years ago where we almost went through every one of them. And then when Dr. Stallings and I had our initial meeting to talk about it, we reviewed it again, but when my team got together and we were really kind of picking those 9. Dr. Stallings and I had originally talked about the 9, but then we brought it back to the team. So I do think that it's been reviewed a couple of times since then.
Yeah, I guess I'd just like to see kind of a side-by-side, and I mean, they're probably not going to be action steps, but more just like that's kind of a temperature check, right, on how we were doing before COVID, really, and now that that's over and we've had a couple of years to settle, and we have so much higher enrollment in special education across the board, how our resourcing compares now to before all of that.
Okay.
And when we were really making an effort right in kind of as a response to the action items in that report. So
yeah, we could look at how that would stack up and the best way to present that.
Okay, thanks.
I think we could do that. I'm thinking a chart, but then I don't know if all of them would fit into that, but we'll look at that.
Okay, thanks.
I was going to say, thank you for the follow-up report. I know over the years, a lot of us that are sitting up here, especially who were around during the Gibson report, appreciate the follow-up. You know, to now, we've been asking for this for a while, to kind of do a deep dive and see, you know, after the Gibson report, where we're at, and just kind of keep, you know, tracking that. The numbers on, you know, the increase in students, I think is eye-opening, you know, when you see those. And just for a lot of people who may be tuning in or, you know, have been a part of the special ed, one of the reasons you were brought on board is because of your stick-to-itness, the ability to dive in your communication skills. I've seen that, you know, transition. Of course, it's never perfect and it's never what everybody wants, but those are some of the reasons why you came after Dr. Short, when Dr. Short retired. So thank you for what you're doing and continue to do within our special ed department. One of the questions I had, though, when we look at, I think it's the 4th slide on the high leverage action steps.
Yes.
I noticed there was after step 3 of the joint learning walks, we jumped to step 5.
Yes.
I think you addressed that in the
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
step 4, that RTI, that was the one where I said that's that we had just had the meeting and that Holly and the district was working
Okay.
on that one because
Okay.
that's kind of and it was part of the Gibson audit. And the Gibson audit had an amazing amount of information in it. So even through the 27 recommendations, not all of them were special education.
Right.
And so that's an
Right.
example of one of them. But we still felt like the RTI process is so important
Okay.
that it was one of those high leverage steps.
Okay.
And the district is focusing on it.
Right. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and going back to that too, and you reference that, but that may be something, you know, at every level we may, you know, we can give kind of a summary of what's happening with RTI because there's definitely a focus on that at all the levels. So
Right.
we can do that in a Friday packet.
I feel like the special ed department is getting much better at collaborating with the other district departments, which is part of our strategic plan.
Right.
But I think we're just bringing it to a different level. And so I'm really excited about that as well.
Just a quick question, and I hope this isn't too obvious. The numbers that you showed in the first couple of charts show pretty explosive growth. What would you attribute that to?
So I would say that Texas used to have the 10% rule and now they don't, but it's happening all over the nation. There have been some changes in the way that students qualify, but we're seeing it all over Texas, all over the country, and I don't know why. I just know, and maybe we're all doing a better job through RTI at identifying students that potentially have a disability and getting those referrals out there. because a lot of students, about 80% are qualifying. So we don't have, when the DNQ did not qualify, our DNQ rate is not high, which means the campuses and the student support teams are doing their job in collecting data and making those referrals.
And
It's an enigma.
I'll just add, when that kind of came out and it was in the press, you know, the district's numbers were actually above the state average, which speaks to the training that, you know, Dr. Short and her team had done, you know, with current administration, with current teachers, et cetera. And I think, if anything, we've just taken that to another level. And even our new hires, making sure that, you know, they're trained and things of that nature. So, you know, I would just say the ability to identify probably has gotten better. And that kind of accounts for some of the numbers that we have.
We have had a few campuses, registrars, or assistant principals tell us that we are being recommended for special ed.
That was going to be my question, is do we have a sense of how many of those students are new to the district compared to, you're obviously doing a better job identifying, but it's two parts to it, isn't it?
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
So actually, I do get a report monthly of new to special ed within CCISD, and then new to district, but special ed as well. And so these numbers aren't going to be right, but if I'm just thinking off the top of my head, we usually have 30 to 40 students on that report every month. Now, I will tell you the largest chunk of those are early learning, because the kids are coming in and we are doing those evaluations at the SEEK. So I would say if you took early learning out of that mix, that we probably have 20 students a month moving in that are already qualified for special education.
Okay, and I have to ask the follow-up question, and maybe you don't know it, but I bet someone else here does, about how many students do we have moving in from out of district every month?
You know, we'd have to go back and look at that, because it's usually we have about right now, about the same. We have a few more that are coming in now, but we can get that number easily. You'll have some that leave and some that come in. And it kind of levels about this time of the year, and it's almost, you know, I hate to say, but it's almost in and out, looks pretty similar. So, but we can get those numbers. Dustin has those numbers. And I was thinking too, as well as the stats on the special education, the number that are coming in, what is that percentage?
That's exactly where I was going. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. So we'll look at that percentage. That will be a little bit of a deeper dive for Mr. Hart and his team, but we'll definitely, we can get those numbers. We haven't. Yeah, good question.
Any other questions or comments from the board? I did want to just say thank you as well for bringing this forward. We have talked, Mr. Hill mentioned, we've talked about the Gibson report off and on over the last few years, and recognizing that similar to our approach with our budget and finance, similar to our approach with staffing units, similar to our approach with, you know, reliability of transportation and facilities and safety, focusing on our programs and especially our special populations is really important. And while a snapshot in time may have shown us that we had accomplished, you know, many of the things that had been identified, we recognize that it's ongoing and something that we wanted to get a good sense from you all as far as how you felt we were doing, what things we were doing to focus on what had been highlighted, if there was anything different that has caught our attention, especially with the growth that you mentioned. And we know as a board, we've looked at additional staffing units to support this growth. And seeing it in a handful of slides is extremely important. And I do know the work of the team, and I've been able to visit Penny Sweeney and her space. It is a very welcoming place for families, and I've gotten to sit there with her for a bit just to look at some of the intake and the metrics that she's tracking, recognizing that she's doing that for dual language families and students that are coming in that are overwhelmed with what services do they need and how can their child be successful. I know that's really important. And I think we didn't mention it in this report, but I do think the special education PTA is a critical partner in helping us continue to share information about the progress that's being made, recognizing that we're never going to really be done with this work, but it's always going to be something that we continue to focus on and to improve. And so when there's an opportunity to share these updates with SEPT, I think it would be really helpful, knowing they may not all see the workshop this afternoon, but helping them just recognize that it's something that we are focused on, because it really is something that we take serious. So thank you for bringing this forward. Dr. Sloan, thank you also for being part of this and helping to raise the level of awareness, and thanks to Dr. Engel too for making sure we got the chance to hear about it.
Absolutely, and we will be bringing our new Behavior Center report that we just started. So as that develops through, it'll be interesting to give some updates on that one, get that chance to settle, and we're excited about that opportunity.
Well, we always appreciate y'all's support. You have a reputation as a board for supporting special education in CCISD, so thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Okay, next item is exploration team updates.
Okay, so we have 2 updates for you this afternoon. And we'll start the first update, and both of these updates honestly are a pretty high level right now as we keep going into this, but then as we'll begin to add some more detail in a Friday packet as we move through, so you can kind of tell this is that overview, and then and I'll make a note, hey, this is just an update here so that we can't maybe come every single month, but at least be ensuring that you're well informed of everything. Well, the first update is from the development team at Space Center Intermediate. We have Dr. Thornton here to join us. But Vision 2030 in our new strategic planner, the charges for this group who are investigating ways to elevate intermediate schools in CCISD to be nationally recognized centers of innovation, creation, and collaboration. And the planning work has begun at Space Center Intermediate. And Mr. Moses will share the initial progress with trustees.
Thank you, Dr. Engel. We appreciate the time today to kind of share our work so far with our developmental team. Dr. Ann Thornton is here. She's the principal at Space Center Intermediate. And Dr. Laura Mackay also helps head up this team of innovative educators looking to elevate the intermediate experience. As Dr. Engel mentioned, Vision 2030 was formed here about a year and a half ago, where we worked on different ideas, and one of those promising idea was to elevate that intermediate experience for our students. And so as we looked at that and how do you implement that over a 10 intermediate school district, obviously we decided to attack that with phases. And so phase 1 is Space Center Intermediate. That is our number one phase, our number one school that we're looking at. And so as we look, Dr. Engel read this to you, but all Clear Creek ISD intermediate schools will be nationally recognized as centers of innovation, creation, and collaboration. And here are the 3 recommendations. One was to redesign intermediate school learning systems from both a scheduling and curriculum offering. Looking around the profile of a learner and trying to help that process throughout, again, that elevating that intermediate experience in the middle as the focal point for that child's learning experience. And so that involves, of course, scheduling, curriculum. The second bullet point there is develop facility modifications as proposals. So as we do this, as we begin to plan this and we go through the phases, what does that look like from a facility? And do we have the current facilities in order to incorporate these STREAM opportunities and activities for our students? And then finally, just expand the career and interest-based offerings. We've done that through 6th grade launch. It's off to a great start. Walked the halls the other day with Dr. Thornton at Space Center and got to see some of the launch classrooms as they worked on SMART goals, as they worked on learning Microsoft Word and Outlook and PowerPoint, and putting together a PSA, if you will, a public service announcement to help new students enter the school. So it's exciting to see our kids at the 6th grade level learn that. And so that's a big piece of Vision 2030. So as we go off, the kickoff meeting for phase 1 at Space Center Intermediate was back on August 28th. It consisted of 16 members, a lot of those which are Dr. Thornton's teachers in all the core areas, as well as some elective teachers. There's also district administration. We have CTE representation. We have CNI representation. Stanley Zavala is with us, advanced academics. So lots of people joining in, as well as parent representation on this committee. And we began to talk about how does this look, phase one, Space Center Intermediate. And so the goal of the day was to begin the work to elevate the intermediate school experience by incorporating STREAM. And so the charge, there were 6 bullet points there, and I'll hit them quickly. Begin to develop the support structures to incorporate STREAM. Understanding that whatever we put together has to be able to be replicated. It's not a standalone at Space Center. It will be replicated at the other 9 intermediates. So what does that look like? Of course, it needs to be innovative. It needs to be something new, something creative, something exciting for our students. It has to be within reasonable funding requests as we build this thing, and we think about not just curriculum, but also facility modifications. We want to attract Space Center intermediate zone students, and we want to protect what currently exists. Dr. Thornton and her staff have done an excellent job of creating a culture and a climate that students are growing in that area. We saw that over the last year, the work that they've done in their PLCs, and we want to be able to protect what's currently going on at Space Center Intermediate in that area. And so Dr. Thornton was instrumental in this next activity. We asked them to list the current offerings, the things that are going on currently at Space Center Intermediate that are working. And so that we put them into 4 categories there: school climate, curriculum, programs, and community. There are about 20, I would say, bullet points total for each category. Of course, we didn't want to put them all there, but we've kind of brought forward the top 5 or 6 in each category, because they are doing some fantastic things at Space Center Intermediate for their students. And so we want to protect that. We want to make sure that those things carry on as we move forward into implementing the STREAM, and how do we build the STREAM program around the current things that are happening. So we spent quite a bit of time with that, making sure that we listed everything out, because again, some of the committee members were not Space Center Intermediate faculty and staff, and may not be fully aware of all the things that are going on there at Space Center. From there, we broke into models for consideration. And so myself, Dr. Thornton, Dr. Mackay, kind of explained the 8 models which you see before you. These are things that we've gathered. Some are already currently active in the district. Others are things that we've seen from other campuses, other districts within the state, as well as from outside of the state. And so you see those 8 models. And so we took a lot of time just going through each one, explaining it to this committee so that they would have a working knowledge of what those models look like. We went through and we named pros and cons that just popped into our head for each thing after we heard it. There were certainly some good things for each model that's presented. There was also some question marks that said, well, how would that work with what we're having at Space Center currently? And so we went through those pieces, and at the end, we asked them to submit to us their top 2 or 3 models that they felt really comfortable with moving forward as an individual. That's kind of how we left the meeting. We had told them they could, certainly submit that at the moment, or if they wanted to go home and think about it, let it kind of percolate, if you will, and ponder their options, and then submit that. And so when we come back in September, we'll spend half a day discussing those top models that kind of rose to the top, and have that discussion of what does that look like, and then start to try to work our way to a selection of the model for Space Center Intermediate STREAM. It may be one of the models that we saw on the screen. It could very well be a hybrid of something that we saw. In other words, we like this piece and we're going to pull it, and we like this piece and we're going to pull that, and kind of create our own model, if you will. What you have on that last slide there is just the timeline for the charter. I mentioned September 26th, half day, working on those top models, and then a selection. The 31st will be a full day of structure building. So once we decide on the model, we'll spend the entire day on October 31st building the structure. What does that look like in an instructional day, in an instructional week, in an instructional year around the model that's decided upon. Then in November, we're going to send 4 or 5 of the teachers and administrators to CAST, which is a conference there, a technology conference in San Antonio, begin to generate ideas of what this looks like specifically for Space Center. And then we'll come back in December and come up with a consensus meeting with a final proposal. The spring, we'll be bringing in Dr. Silva and her team to really work on curriculum of what it looks like with the current model that we chose, as well as the structures that need to be in place, and work towards that. And the ultimate goal is the implementation of phase 1 at Space Center in the fall of 2025. So that's just a quick update where we're at. Dr. Thornton's here if there's any specific questions about Space Center. Again, we had a great time with the team back in August, and their current offerings really opened our eyes to all the things that they do for our students, from the experiential learning opportunities that are not field trips. They're not just to go fun, have fun. They actually come back and put it into action in the classroom. Their Cardinal clubs, their student interest groups. I was with Dr. Thornton this past week, and we went into a class of at-risk students, and they just finished Cardinal Club, and they were so excited to share with both of us what Cardinal Club they chose. Of course, there was one that was upset because football filled up really quick, but he was able to get into the umpiring, baseball umpire student interest group and club, and so he learned a lot about umpiring baseball. So they're doing a lot of great things to incorporate that culture, that belonging, if you will, there in Space Center Intermediate. So we're excited to build upon that and really roll out Stream in the fall of 2025. Thank you.
Any questions? Any more comments?
Really, more comments. Franklin, I know, and I just wanted to commend you on your walkthroughs. I've heard you've made that a regular part of your day, and it's effective. And from a board perspective, we hear about that and how it makes those campuses feel that they've been touched. So please continue to do that. Another thing I will say, Vision 2030 gave us the ability to kind of take a look at where we want our students to be, 5-6 years from now, right? And one of the things that we also looked at was, how do we utilize our community partners? How do we utilize, and just using that as an example, Space Center sits right across from NASA. Knowing that we're losing some of those, students to WAVE and other programs, how can we address that, and how can we get them to, stay at and support their neighborhood school? So I'm very excited to see this. I also wanted to go ahead and recognize Dr. Mackay, who's been instrumental in thinking outside the box and bringing forth, some recommendations and just some what ifs. I know she was given the directive to just think wildly, and no vision or dream is too big, and just put it out there for the committee to review and recommend. So please make sure that she gets that feedback. But thank you, and Dr. Thornton, thank you for also being accepting and also working with the committee and looking at ways to enhance, the campus. So.
Yes, and yeah, thank you for this. This was very enlightening, and I'm glad to see this moving forward. I guess my first question is just around the overall intermediate school vision for 2030. So is the idea, and I think this is kind of what we've talked about before, but just making sure we're all on the same page, is the idea to have programming like this at every intermediate school, that they would be differentiated by the type of programming so like Space Center would be a STREAM school, but maybe a different school would be a fine arts school, and a different school could be maybe something life sciences related. We could decide as we get to each individual one, but the idea isn't to have the exact same programming at every single one, right?
I think the idea that the committee came up with at the end was that each individual intermediate school would have a primary emphasis, if you will. A lot of the curriculum, a lot of the thoughts would be the same as far as exposing students to opportunities and exploration. And then each intermediate then would have a primary emphasis. So obviously Space Center being right next to NASA, right next to Johnson Space Center, their primary emphasis would be space, right? Whereas another intermediate might choose to go a different route as far as their primary emphasis. And so so there's going to be some of that involved. It won't be totally different, like all 10 of them be 10 different things, but they won't be exactly the same.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think in terms of thinking about models, there's a lot to be said for the Ed White eSTEM model, because that seems like it kind of borrows a lot of the advantages of the other models out there, because you've got everyone in the school participates, whether they're from the neighborhood or they've transferred in. But at the same time, I like the magnet element of it as well, so that kids anywhere in the district who are really passionate about that program offering can select that school, and it becomes a school of choice. So that's kind of my thought there. I would hate for students in the school to be left out, which is what we have in the current magnet models. But at the same time, I think having a magnet element to it increases the success of the program, because you have students who are actually choosing it.
Sure.
And so you get more of a critical mass there. But I'm really excited to see what develops out of this. So thanks for the work on it, and keep us posted.
Yeah, I wanted to say, this was my biggest concern with Vision 2030 was the intermediates. We wanted to do something, but it really seemed to me like we didn't know exactly what we wanted to do. And this, I think, is a very big part of figuring out just exactly what we want to do. I know this is only one school, we've got several more to go, but I would be very eager to see us move out with something like this for our other intermediates. And sooner would probably be better than later. The other thing I wanted to say, and just to follow up on Trustee Bowen's comments, I think it's great that each school can have an emphasis, but I really believe that mobility is important, so that, like you said, if a student wants to chase a dream someplace else, that's available. And I realize transportation kind of plays into that and can be difficult, but a lot of families would make some sacrifices to see that happen. So I'd like to see when this is all put together, and not just this school, but all the other ones, we've got the program in place that we have a system like that where every kid has a multiple of options available to them, and they really can fulfill their interests and fulfill their dreams.
The Cornerstone Academy, that's an intermediate charter school in Spring Branch, is that right?
Yeah.
So using that as a model, or at least one of the campuses that y'all were considering, them doing it. I mean, I've been looking through their website about that Cornerstone Academy, and it would, I think, for the 2030 goals and everything, and we've talked about charter schools, with us having at least Clear Horizon as kind of a quasi charter. That really is very innovative for a district to consider doing. And so for, the Space Center concept, or Trustee Bowen was talking about every intermediate school. I mean, 4 of the 10 have the wave and the magnet, so we've got these other 6. Clear Creek Intermediate could possibly use some help to boost some enrollment. I think it's the lowest enrollment intermediate school we have. So looking at this, I mean, I don't know, as y'all dive further in everything, in my opinion, I really like what they've done here. It would be nice to see if that is a direction that we wanted to go in, with the innovation. I mean, everything that they're doing, and we've got the campuses, we've got the the students, and I would like to see more opportunities like that for the students in the district. So how we spread that out and y'all propose it, it'll be exciting to see how you come back. But that Cornerstone Academy, if you haven't looked into it, it's very interesting. So thank you.
Yeah, and maybe just to piggyback off of that, I really do see this as kind of a good opportunity to experiment a little with the intermediate school has been structured the same since time immemorial. I mean, we've had our 7 classes a day or our AB block schedules, but I think really experimenting with the structure and seeing what works best in this day and age for students, this is kind of our opportunity to do that. And so, I want to kind of be innovative and swing for the fences here and see what really works. Because I think whatever we do, Space Center, once we have this program, it'll always kind of stand apart as having its own identity, which is exactly what we want. But at the same time, we're going to learn a lot that can be incorporated into all of the other schools. So I just want to be encouraging in that.
The one thing about this is, as we roll it out into phase 1, and once we've set it in stone, once we've set it, it's not in stone as far as Space Center goes. Like, we can adjust and modify and adapt as we go through. As we begin planning phase 2 with other intermediates and we see different things, we can always go back and adjust at Space Center to address some of those needs or some of those things that we feel like, hey, this was a great idea that they had that would have worked really well here, and then we can go back and adjust even 4 or 5 years down the road. The idea is by 2030 to have it kind of ironed out and really have a great plan put together for all 10 of our intermediates.
Any other comments or questions?
I just wanted to thank the committee for being bold, thinking big, and like they're saying, use this time to experiment, and maybe you find the next best thing in education. It's bold, but it needs to be, and that's what it was supposed to be. So thank you.
Yep.
Because I know you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone.
Any other comments? I would also say thank you. I did have the chance as well to visit within the first few days of school, and getting to speak with some of the teachers, some of the students, visiting some of the classrooms. There's definitely a level of pride. I was extremely impressed at just the students' level of engagement. They didn't know that I was going to be walking through, or at least I don't think they did. But we got to stop by some classes and watch students in action and teachers, and I was pleased that they really didn't stop. They just kept going. We just got the chance to observe and see exactly what was happening. And within the first 2 or 3 days of school, they were already focused on things that they would be doing for the year. So it really was exciting. I do think that the chance to be bold and the chance to bring something forward also has to be met with a campus and a campus leader who is ready to meet kind of that bold challenge. And I think that's an important conversation as we think about, doing something innovative, something bold, something creative at different campuses. It's just making sure that it's the right time and the right fit. I imagine, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Dr. Thornton, but as we were walking through, I couldn't believe how much time had passed since you've been principal there. And there's something to be said, with what that means, that is your space, you are the CEO of that campus, and the culture and the pride really emanates from your leadership. And so I think that matters, and it goes a long way to our students in making sure that we meet our campuses with that same level of engagement and excitement, prepared to receive a challenge like this to go forward. I think is really big. So thank you for that. Congratulations. It really was. It was fun to visit, and I got to share with some folks. I'm like, that was a different space for me when I got to visit. So it was really
Great
nice.
place.
It really is. It really is. And there's lots of parents that are involved. And I think I saw from Booster Club activity and, really getting behind students and supporting them. It's really exciting to see. PTA recognized as a national PTA. There's just lots happening. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you.
President Sanchez. Can we hear from Dr. Thornton?
I know.
How you think this will impact the campus, just in maybe your vision for what you see?
So my team is really excited about it. We've had some opportunity to meet and work together, but they've also had an opportunity to go back and talk with their colleagues. And I have some great teachers at my school who have followed me along every step of the way. We make all our decisions together. We try to make sure everything that we're doing really will impact our students positively. And if it doesn't, then we revamp and do something different. So they've kind of been the innovative leaders all along. You know, we started the push-ins 7 years ago now when I first became principal there, and they jumped right into it, and they did that. And then we started Leader in Me. They jumped right into it and did that. And then we started Cardinal Clubs. They jumped right in and did that. And all of it was because that's what we thought would be best for kids. So I'm sure that whatever we decide, as long as it's what's best for kids, they're going to jump right in as well.
Fantastic. You know, that makes me think about conversations that we've had about the future of education and what CCISD wants to look like going forward. Vision 2030 is part of that. And it's the world-class concept, right? Providing a world-class education as well as world-class opportunities. And we know in order to move forward, we're going to need to be competitive, right? Whether we're competing with the homeschoolers or the charters or the privates, we have to be competitive. And this is the thinking that we need, is world-class, 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 competitive, and just innovative. So thank you. Thank you.
The last thing I'll just mention is, and I think when you said, Mr. Moses, about we'll refine and we can evolve and adjust as needed, I would say communication to families and students will be key. So as a parent of students who started at Brookwood Elementary, when we were starting the dual language program there, it was really a foreign language enrichment. We called it Spanish Light, was what we titled it. There were things that were big ideas, aspirational ideas of what we wanted for that campus. And in the first year, the ideas didn't necessarily translate to what we aspired. And it did evolve. And I think there were instances where maybe there were just gaps in communication of helping to readjust and reframe for families so that their expectations didn't stay stuck in year one, but ultimately reflected how things were evolving. And so if we do this and we move quickly, recognizing that we don't have it all solved today, that parents just know and students know, we're going to do things that are really in your best interest, but we want them to know there's going to need to be some flexibility with what we ultimately do. So I think that'll be a real important part of this. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yes, and I just, I can't help it. Just one little minute, but honestly, the work that they've done, if you go back in the current offerings already at Space Center Intermediate, they are poised for this, and it's so intuitive. You really do have to be ready, and it's something that they're talking about and looking at, and even if one of these models resonates with them or a hybrid, but they've done a lot of research. You take that to a different campus, it's kind of ready. Something, it might look a little different at another campus. Just one other thing we're not ready to share, but I'm pretty excited. Dr. Silva's team's going out to look at some curriculum in December, taking a trip out of state. So we've got some that might be brought back to intermediate. So we want to take a look first and see if that's a possibility. So there's a lot of things going on, but really the campus is the key, and we're so grateful. And Dr. Mackay, Mr. Zabal have kind of keep dreaming big. So we're very excited and want to make sure that it's at the right place and the right pace, if you will. And she does move pretty quick.
And it must, it must be for the right price, because Miss Benzai has not. Today, as far as that's concerned. So.
We're not there yet.
Yes.
I've still got a picture of the Post-it note. It was about 3 Post-it notes attached together that a Johnson Space Center administrator who was at our vision meeting all those years ago, like put up on the board that I think kind of like had a lot of the genesis of this idea in it. So I'll reshare that with everybody because it's pretty ambitious and cool. So
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you all. Thanks for sharing today. The time is 5:47. Oh, do we have another item? Oh, I'm sorry.
We have Stuart. One.
Oh, I'm
I've got
sorry.
a second exploration team update. That was my mistake. I should have jumped right in.
Oh, that's okay.
Because we do have, and so, in talking about thinking big and, very innovative, something that we are incredibly excited about. So this is a little bit more visionary in that possibly 2026, we might be able to look at something new. This requires a lot of external partnership, but I'd like to go ahead and lead us off on this. The second update is from the Space Center Corridor Exploration Team. I'm not quite as far along. This is still in that visioning, dreaming stage. We have a couple of consistent members. That would be Dr. McKay and Mr. Zavala. So they're kind of dreaming big and helping us, percolate some of those ideas. Ms. Polson is leading this team from the cabinet level in the exploration phase, just to make our get our ideas together. But as we got started, we go back to that first slide because we are really, what happened, and y'all know the excitement around that Texas A&M Space Institute, and it is in our district. And so we talked about this before, but what we began thinking about ways, how can we connect our students to this, at least initially, and talking to a lot of partners with that. So we initiated the exploration team to dream about possibilities. And I really charged them, and you kind of said it, but create something that students cannot get anywhere else but Clear Creek ISD. What is that, world-class opportunity that you can't get anywhere else? So our initial thoughts, and they've kind of evolved, same thing, but our initial thoughts, a stream of innovation, space technology, robotics, engineering, advanced medicine, and looking at those possibilities. And at first there's a lot of ideas around that. It's continued to I'd say, target down a little bit after talking to some of potential people external from us. And what does that need? So we've come up with a thought, and I'll we have a slide on that? Okay. So college preparatory program. This is not a school. This is just a program. The similarity I can think to would be auto mechanics, cosmetology, biotechnology. We have these programs. Those are CTE programs. This is a college prep program. It is not CTE. It's not something that we currently have. And really, we're not finding a lot of that across the state or across the nation. We've been looking at that. But it would provide a feeder of really kind of your high achieving students out first into this college prep program to look at pathways with both aerospace engineering and health science. We're going to focus in at first. But we've got a slide with that student profile as we've kind of zoned this down a little bit. They really want to pursue more advanced collegiate work, communicators and collaborators that would work hand in hand with collegiate mentors and partners. Most likely, these students would be looking at medicine or health science or space. An idea really focusing on some of the top universities. We have one that's building, we have several right in our area, right? Some top universities in the nation. Our thinking is that it might not be inclusive to CCISD, and that we would have it on, CCISD, but be able to open that up to potentially area districts, application, your best student advice, these students would remain on their home campus. They would not enroll in CCISD. Let's say if I'm a Clearbrook High School student, I'm enrolled at Clearbrook, but I'm going to take this no different than I would auto tech or no different than I would biotech. I'm going to drive over to Falls and then I'm going to come back. So it would be a program for that particular time. No reason why you couldn't open it up to Dickinson or Hitchcock or, you know, whatever that might need to, whatever that could look like in the area. So more of a regional program instead of just a district opportunity. More regional. We're just playing with, these are just, this is really big thinking ideas, and we're so grateful for our big thinking partners that are here. And one of those is Mr. Zavala, and Dr. Mackay is doing some big thinking with launch and creating some launch activities as we speak. So we said that's probably more important right now. We just keep doing what you're doing, and Mr. Zavala is going to run through a few of these slides, ideas that they've kind of created.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Engel. It's good to talk to y'all, and as she said, it definitely was a team, so I'm just good to be the spokesperson right now. But as she mentioned, in thinking about this, we came up with really two main pathways at first, is the aerospace engineering and health science. Just because of the, talk about world class in our area, right? Those are two big areas that we felt like we could tap into, especially with the A&M stuff. So just thinking about it through that, and what would this look like for a kid, right? So we had, this could be a morning or an afternoon session, as you see on the slide, where it would be broken up. Monday through Thursday, a kid would go and they would spend, in essence, 2 class periods or over a 90-minute period doing trimester courses. So 12-week long courses. They could get 3 different courses in that time period. And then for that third class during that morning or afternoon would be a time for them to do research, whether that's on a passion project, almost like capstone-like type of activity that would tie back in, obviously, to the stream. And then the Friday, if you notice, Friday looks totally different than all the other days. That is opened up, everybody's working together into groups, no matter which side you're on, right? Whether you're looking at aerospace or the health science, and you're working on a group project, almost Hunch-like, almost New View, if you've ever seen that school, MIT type concept, where they're working on a real life project as a team, problem solving to come up with solutions or come up with a fix. So that's what those Fridays would be blocked out for. And of course, within that third period time, we also put some practicum, if you see that in there. Hopefully, you know, build those connections where they can get to experience and see these things in real life, because we have all those things right here, which is awesome. And then if you look, we came up with, and these are all, and this is what's great about this, it's all interchangeable, right, as things evolve and adjust and develop. But we came up with what would a year 1 or a year 2 look like, and what would those trimester courses be. So we came up with some, and this is obviously looking at things we've seen across the country, and then coming back and compiling that and coming up what we think would fit well here. But obviously, with working with different people and talking to experts, these things could adjust. But we'd have a year 1 plan and a year 2 plan where they would get to take those different courses during that 2-hour or that 2-period block. And then we had one for aerospace engineering as well. Once again, these are built to be flexible. Just looking at what different courses would be appropriate to help give those kids that extra edge, right? When we're looking at, I'm applying to be an engineer going to college at, you know, University of Texas, A&M, you fill in the blank, to have those options. Because I think what courses would look good and help prepare them for those types of programs. Okay, and then obviously, as y'all know, where Space Intermediate was at, right there across the street, right, from NASA, but that space being so proximal to where they're about to put in the Texas A&M new building that's going in research, all of that is right there. To be able to have that proximity and hopefully relationships, that we already have with NASA and stuff, tapping into that. And then, that Friday thing, we already do a lot with Hunch in CCISD, and it has been a great program. But capitalizing on that and continuing to develop that and utilizing that on those Fridays, it can definitely be something along the lines of Hunch, or even if you go on sorry, I've got to scroll down. Yeah, the Systems Go, and there's Genesis in Space, which ties into the health science. But there's a lot of different enrichment opportunities out there in searching, in dreaming, in visioning that go even beyond some of those that would be very interesting to tie those into, as well as the high school scholars or high school aerospace scholars program that you might be familiar with already with NASA. So all those things being tied into a program like this, we think would be a pretty phenomenal experience for our kiddos here in CCISD.
And we're here tonight to sort of seek your feedback, because this is heavily reliant on external partnerships from the university level and the business side. As Mr. Zavala was talking, is that this is not curriculum that we currently have in our district. This would be, we would go out and seek some grant funding to partner with higher education to develop the curriculum to support this program. And we certainly can't start doing that without some guidance and support from the Board of Trustees. So that's where we are. We're kind of at a place where we want to listen to your feedback, and if we continue to get the green light, we'll continue to go. But certainly, we'd like to get your feedback.
Well, I think I've got a couple questions then. If this is intended as career readiness for college kids who are on a college prep orientation, my first thoughts are, does any of this lead to any sort of AP credit or honors courses or that kind of thing? And while you're thinking about that, I would presume anyone from our 5 comprehensive high schools could be a part of this. But what really hit me was, is there any way for Clear Horizons to possibly play into this? Because I would think might be a little awkward. I know a lot of, they do projects, and a lot of those kids do stream type projects, and they lean really heavily on NASA to do those sorts of things, and on the local medical community to do those sorts of things. Is there any way to make all that play together? And while you're thinking about that, the last piece I want to ask about is Hunch. Does that mean that Hunch is moving, expanding? Why? It just seems like anyone who's interested in this would probably also be interested in that at some level. And I just don't know how all these things play together. And I don't know to what extent you've thought about how all these things play together.
And I can answer a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, and then this is totally exploration. So honestly, there's not a complete, but as far as the credit goes, the college prep with Horizons, I've talked to Ms. Tidwell, she's aware of some of these ideas, and wondering why would you not be have the opportunity as a Horizon student to participate in this, right?
Yeah.
So definitely, so that is something that as we just vision, and yes, it's more of everybody has that opportunity. As far as credits go, I know I don't know. I'll let you talk about.
Yeah, and that's something we looked at as far as wanting it to be appealing, right, to those kids who would be seeking after AP credit and things like that. Obviously, this would be new curriculum that we'd have to put together in conjunction with some partnership. So hopefully something from that could come. But that has definitely been thought about as far as what would be appealing to them.
And the hunch program at the schools will not move, they'll still remain in place. This was really just a sampling of what potential enrichment opportunities could happen on that Friday.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think this is fantastic. I think it's exactly the kind of program that we should be trying to create. And I really like the thought that was put into the structure, the courses that would be offered. I mean, I'm sure some of this is malleable as you start moving toward implementation, but it's very impressive and ambitious, and I really like it. And I also like that it's specific. Like we're starting with 2 areas where we know we can really excel, and to prove out a model. And I like that a lot. I guess what does our implementation timeline look like? I mean, is this something where we could start taking juniors next year? Is it going to take longer than that, or I guess what does that look like, and what do you think the? I mean, obviously there would need to be a space for this, but I really don't want not having a building to be an obstacle here. Like we can find a way to make that work as we build the program, and then.
Yeah, first of all, there's spaces around that we could, we've rented space for. I know we rented Emory Rural University to have dual credit classes when Lake was being rebuilt. So we can look around. There's a lot of things that are going up in that, thinking through that space center intermediate kind of area, but a building would not in any way be a limiting factor. The initial thinking 2026. Yeah, this is. I mean, you've got to have time to really think through. So we're not ready to even. Now the Space Center Intermediate, that's something that we're looking at to do that phase 1 next year. But this is really still so reliant on community partners. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Yes, and funding too. Certainly, higher education, even in the public sector, no different than K-12. There's just not a huge disposable income in that to develop these programs. So we would go forward and seek higher education partners to join with us to go for some grant funding to develop this curriculum. And our vision, our team, we hit our limit, as far as we can go. We need to start engaging with some external partners to see where we can take it. But potentially this could be something that could be replicated across the state if it's done well, and we will do it well. And so we just didn't want to go out and start engaging in these conversations without the buy-in and communication with the board. But we're not in a place yet to name any partners.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. I can speak personally that 2 of the programs that you guys listed up there are excellent curriculum that I would love to see more of here in CCISD. I think it's a great opportunity for our kids to encourage all of that, and we are right here in the hub of it. Kind of following along with the rollout of it, would this be something that we would identify? Would they need to be identified their freshman year so that they could take? Because if I'm looking correctly, your 11th and 12th grade year is pretty much just that. So then would they focus their 9th and 10th grade year taking all their English and history?
Do you want to speak to the schedule? I know, kind of looking at that high school schedule.
If that takes your 11th and 12th grade year though, and that was your week, are they taking those other courses then their freshman and sophomore year?
The program is built around a half-day schedule in that 11th and 12th grade year, so it's not a full day. It's a half day, much like what Dr. Engel mentioned with cosmetology, biotech, some of our other CTE programs. So they would still be on their home campus in the morning, and then in the afternoon they may be part of this program, or vice versa. And so they'll be taking their, the AP English, the AP Cal, some of those AP courses that we know these students are desiring, and so we need to be able to provide that for them as well. We will be looking at different things throughout their 9th and 10th grade year to start identifying those students that are truly wanting to be a part of this program and are capable of handling the workload and the magnitude of it. Different things from, of course, the courses that they take, as well as a PSAT score, things of that nature, in order to help identify those students early on. and trying to prescribe, if you will, a pathway for them to be ready at the end of their 10th grade year to move forward into this program. And please add to anything.
Yeah, no, we played around with the different schedules and what's required of the state and wanted to make sure, because we knew kids would want AP courses, right? College still would want to see AP calculus or whatever, to make sure we have room for that, for those students to take that.
Yeah, I've just got a couple more things. First of all, I don't want any question or anything I said here to imply in any way I'm not enthusiastic about it. All my questions and comments were assuming we are going to press forward with something like this, because I think it's just so obvious, it's blindingly obvious that we need to exploit this opportunity. And, it's a great way forward for our kids. I did have another question, and that is, I just sat through a presentation about grades 6, 7, and 8 over at Space Center, and now I'm looking at 11 and 12, and I'm assuming that the reason why this is focused on 11 and 12 is because we would be partnering with a four-year institution that is interested in getting kids that are, practically 1 foot in the door already. What would we do for 9 and 10? Is there anything we can come up with that sort of bridges that gap and allows somebody who has interest in these two areas to just keep progressing on through that path?
We do have a lot of courses in the high school. I mean, we have Project Lead the Way. So yes, they're taking AP Bio, they're taking, advanced AP Physics, all of the coursework. So everyone would have that opportunity on their home campus. This is definitely a pro. Sir, I don't know what, we just don't even I don't know what to call it.
Yeah.
I say a program, but it's really more, it's an opportunity, but everyone has all of those opportunities on their campus. So, and we certainly have engineering and health science and that coursework. But once we get advertising and get that, get things lined up a little bit, then you start letting kids know, okay, no different than we do right now. We'll soon have information on the science magnet, okay, kids, this is what's, your opportunity for next year.
Yeah.
So you start advertising that, but you need a little lead time on that. But
I'll add that, most programs in a preparatory sense take the 2 years to get the basics out of the way, whether you're talking CTE, whether you're talking college, whatever, those basics are those 2 years. Yes. So there are things that are required by TEA from a high school standpoint, from an elective standpoint, that we need to make sure that we're providing those students that opportunity to, for lack of better words, knock that out as far as early on those first 2 years, so that they can focus the junior and senior year on the AP courses that we know they're desiring to have to prepare them, as well as provide this opportunity to prepare them for that next step whenever they do actually enter that university. So that's kind of that 9th, 10th grade framework, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah, well, several questions. So this is great, and I love seeing this. Have y'all identified some of your biggest challenges that you're going to have? Making it happen. What are some of the biggest challenges y'all have identified in order to make this happen?
The great thing about this exploration is that we had no limits.
Yeah,
and so we haven't had that happen yet, but I think as we progress, there might be. But
right now, the first order was the partnership.
That was a softball question for y'all to knock it over.
I'm not used to it, right? I think just the development of the partnerships, that's the part that we don't control, right? I mean, we do to some extent, but in the education realm, if it's in education, we all control it. We can manipulate it and make it do what we want to. We start talking about outside partnerships, whether it's higher ed or businesses, then you're coming to the table with a partner. And so those are things that we need to start moving forward. Once those are in place, then we can start determining, okay, what are the challenges that truly we face in this process.
So what are the ideal facility uses, locations, in order to make this successful? If you're inviting outside districts to apply to send students over here, I'm assuming possibly for fee, right? But what about facility-wise? I mean, I know you said that y'all could rent space and you've done it in the past and everything, but wouldn't something as big as this is want its own space?
So I think that there's information to share at a future date and time with the board, but the excitement, the activity that's happening along Saturn is conducive to providing us some location to host courses and some activities. We did share some schematics with the board a while back and realized that's maybe our long-term vision, but we feel like we could get this program up and running without an identified school building, so to speak.
So if this is so dependent on external institutions, I'm kind of curious as to what level of discussions we've already had. I mean, just listening to this presentation, about all I get out of it is, if we're going to partner with you, we want to be able to partner with everybody else in the area. I don't see that as any kind of impediment at all. I mean, we were one of the first ones over at San Jac with an early college program, and now look at how many other districts have hopped on to that bandwagon and have their own programs over there. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to get in early and help shape what that program looks like and how that collaboration works.
A couple of years ago, one of the gentlemen in that first slide, Dr. Greg Bonin, sat in the meeting with him, and he mentioned that the funding is probably not going to be at the K through 12 level, but your higher education level has grants and other things like that. And with that A&M Institute, what I foresee is us probably renting space in the short term, and as we build up the program, getting our own space in the long term. But I think with that being said, U of H, Clear Lake, A&M, obviously, maybe even UT as some of our targets and partners in the short term. That's just kind of my feeling, especially from that meeting, that he was directing, hey, if you're wanting to get something off the ground, work with some of these higher education partners and in collaborating with them in writing the curriculum, etc. So that's just kind of a little information that I think is probably the direction we're going to go.
Yeah, and just to kind of add to that, I think the mentality here is totally right, of build the program first. And then once you've got a program off the ground and it's got some staying power and we've worked the bugs out and we know what the needs are for it, then we build buildings and facilities to meet the needs that we've identified. But if you build a building first and then just think if you build it, they will come, a lot of times that doesn't quite pan out. And so I really like the approach here of do what we have to do to get a program up and running and make it successful, and with the long-term vision that eventually we will create a facility for it that really accelerates it. So.
Any other comments? I don't know that there's more that I can add. I'll say that it's exciting to see from a district perspective. It's exciting to see from a work perspective, and when those things converge, I have biases for both. So, it's an exciting time. I've been excited to hear about it. I've also been fortunate not to be involved in it, but I know there are great minds and lots of enthusiasm and energy behind it. And I do think some of this is about timing, and if there's broad interest, I think it gives it a great potential to really happen. So thank you all for putting this behind. I had a couple of questions. I think AP credit, dual credit, certificates, are those all elements that are at least in the thinking, not knowing where we'll land, but I think I heard that, and I was also wondering, and I think I agree with the different university partners. I know Texas Southern University University of Houston main campus. I know U of H Clear Lake is doing a lot in their 50th anniversary this year. So there are big ideas happening in other higher education institutions and where we could help them accomplish some of their big goals. I think that would be exciting as well. Because at the end of the day, these are all potential pipeline students.
Absolutely.
To their systems and universities. And so I think they could be great partners.
And I was just going to say, with Stanley involved and with Laura involved, I wouldn't be surprised if AP, certifications, things like that are probably in the works or thought about as we talk about curriculum and things like that. So
Probably the last thing I'll just say is, because I do think we find it to be challenging sometimes in our high schools today, is we have coursework and content that students get really excited about. And sometimes it's difficult for us to find the staff and the teachers to deliver that. And so when we think about what's going to be required to attract and to retain, when we offer some very specialized learning opportunities, I think we can't miss that mark. Because I think we're doing it on occasion in some of our high schools today with courses and pathways that we have really excited students and families about. We've built them up as they go through elementary and intermediate, and then sometimes we fall a little short. And so if we can think about what that looks like and how we ensure that we don't miss that final piece so that students don't get turned off after we've gotten them so interested along the way. I just think it'll especially be a big deal here, but it's already a big deal today.
we
in our high
are
schools.
going to poach some of your employees.
My employees, I don't know about that. Anyway, did I say I love when both of our worlds converge?
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
It is exciting. Thank you all. These are big ideas, big thinking. It sounds very world-class, very aspirational and visionary. It is exciting to be on this side of what had not been as much energy, with so much that was distracting public education, distracting school districts, and we've stayed very focused. And I think because of that, we're in a position where we can talk about these things. So thank you. Thanks.
Well, I do have to say that exploration team model is really kind of, just getting a small group, and then it'll get bigger, as we implement and all that. But it's been exciting to dream big. So thank y'all for that. Thank y'all very much.
Okay. Any more?
I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, I didn't want to get ahead of myself again. So at 6:19, it is 6:19. The board will now move to closed session as authorized by the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Section 551.001, concerning purposes permitted by the Act, including 551.071, consultation with attorney, 551.072, deliberation regarding real property, 551.074, deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignments, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public employer to hear a complaint or charge against an employee.
Thank you, Sandy.
6:50, and I'll call us back into open session. And I will entertain a motion for item A.
Mr. President, I move that the board approves the 2024-2025 team operating procedures.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, to raise your right hand. It passes unanimous. Thank you. Item B.
Mr. President,
Mr. Miller?
I move that we adopt the recommendation of the superintendent or that we adopt the resolution declaring a surplus and authorizing the sale of an approximately 11.8 acre tract generally known as 1202 Highway 3, League City in Galveston County, Texas, as further described in the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Any comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, to raise your right hand. It passes unanimous. Thank you. And item C.
Mr. President,
Mr. Cunningham?
I move that the board approves Miss Amber Patrick for Director of State and Federal Programs.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. Any comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Passes unanimous. Thank you.
Yes, we are excited. Ms. Patrick is currently a grant writer and has been with the district for over 5 years and in that capacity, and so she has worked directly under Ms. Pigwell, who's currently in that position, and then will be retiring. So we're excited about that. She previously had some experience both at University of Houston and Texas Tech with some writing and some procurement of funding. So we're pretty excited about that.
Thank you. And with no further items, I'll adjourn us at 6:52.